I am a Unitarian Universalist. As a kid, I learned that means we are the church of the open minds, the loving hearts, and the helping hands. Although that is a true statement, it doesn't even begin to encapsulate everything that our church means to me. This church is the reason I am who I am today, but more importantly, the people in this church are the reason I am who I am. They all took a part in raising me. Some cared for me in the church nursery, some taught me about puberty in 8th grade OWL, and some helped me through my worst moments. Steady and enduring, this church has played a large part in shaping my identity. The first time I had a strong sense of who I was 16 and halfway across the country getting flowers braided into my hair at the Boston Commons, with my best friend next to me and my minister reading on the hill behind us. The first time I knew where I belonged, it was my 17th birthday, and I was spending the night with a multi-generational group of women in Channing Hall. The best birthday I've ever had was spent dancing with a 70-year-old women and 10-year-old girls alike, surrounded by some of my best friends in the whole world. To most people, that doesn't sound like the most appealing way to spend their birthday, but to me, I couldn't imagine a better night. For many teenagers, a church is a place where they are forced to go. But to me, this church is my home, a haven where I am welcomed by smiling faces every Sunday, no matter what. This church has also shaped my values and encouraged me to stand up for them. While I've always been proud of the work that my church does for reproductive rights and healthcare, I didn't personally get involved until a Supreme Court decision rocked our entire community. June 24th, 2022 began as a day of joy. I was standing in Rabel, singing and dancing with the children of this congregation as a Sun Fund junior counselor, when Roe v. Wade was overturned. The mood instantly shifted. Women of all generations surrounded my friends and me, giving us the support we needed in the moment while telling us that we must go out and fight for our rights. They inspired me to dive into my work with Teenage Communication Theater, or TACT, at Planned Parenthood. Through TACT, local health educators provide us with year-long, all-encompassing health and social education, and we are trained in how to facilitate sensitive conversations. I then get the opportunity to take my knowledge to educate other teenagers in the Dallas-Fort Worth community, including OWL students at this church, through skits focused on social topics such as substance abuse, healthy relationships, sexual health, and racial equity. When I'm helping others, I am living through the principles of this church. As a teenager who has lived in a border state my whole life, I've always known that the border crisis existed, but I never understood the gravity of what was actually happening, nor did I know where to turn to educate myself. Not until last summer, when our YRUU class took a trip to Tucson, Arizona, where Borderlinks educated us about the borderlands crisis and taught us to organize for justice for migrants affected by ongoing conflict at the border. With support from our congregation, my classmates and I developed a plan to share our learnings and experiences with the church community and organize partnerships with other faith organizations in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that offer services and aid to immigrants. I also saw educational opportunities in my school. When I am bringing my values to life through service, I feel connected to this church community. Although I will be away from this church next year and in a new community, I will carry the values I learned close to my heart. I strive to live in moments where I am helping my community and when my loving church community surrounds me. These are the moments that bridge my spirituality and my values, and these are the moments when I know who I am. Thank you.
One of the questions I was asked most as a kid was, what do you want to be when you grow up? When I was really small, this was my favorite thing to be asked, and I would answer with whatever odd job I thought was cool that week. But now, as a senior in high school, people expect a serious answer. But they also expect an answer to the underlying question. They're really saying, what do you want to be, and what do you want your purpose in life to be? I've always been very intimidated by the idea of purpose. It feels so permanent and life feels so fleeting. How does one find something solid and cling to it their entire lives? How do I spend my life with one goal, and what do I do once I've achieved it? I've come to understand that if we interpret purpose as a goal or something that has to be achieved, it can limit us. But if we understand purpose as a way of life, it opens up so many possibilities and feels a lot less intimidating. Like how I've decided to dedicate my life to always learning and growing. Maybe that can be my purpose. As a church, we pride ourselves on how we change with the times and how we never stop learning and growing. We say our purpose is to love, affirm, support, find our own paths, and help guide others down theirs. What about our purpose as a species? Scientifically, humans exist with the same purpose as every other thing in the universe, to survive and create more humans to go on and do the same. But we do so much with our lives than any other creature. So how did we evolve from the basics of life to faith in finding a purpose? The movie Soul says that everyone has a spark, a reason to live. Most characters in that movie see their careers as their purpose. Some view their purpose as a casual hobby or a passion that they pursue. But the entire movie, we follow a character who's trying to find their spark, while everyone they encounter along their journey is telling them they need to find their purpose. In the end, though, we learn that it is not a purpose that is their spark, but their spark comes from simply experiencing life. However, that is not to say that your life cannot have purpose. It's rather that your purpose doesn't have to be an all-encompassing reason to live. I, as I'm sure all of you, have many purposes. I believe my purpose as an artist is to never stop learning. My purpose as a friend is to bring joy and comfort to others' lives. My purpose as a son is to make my parents proud. And my purpose as a Unitarian is to love and uplift our community. However, my spark, the reason I live, I believe, is to watch sunrises. So what are we doing if we are not doing something with purpose? Whether that purpose is to create or destroy, to push away from the past or pull towards the future, something one works their whole life to achieve, or something more immediate, like simply getting through the morning. There is purpose behind everything we do. But people don't generally search for purpose behind every action of their day. So I invite you to think of purpose as a reason behind doing something. The reason we all drink coffee is to wake up. The purpose is to wake up. The reason we wear coats is to keep us warm. The purpose is warmth and comfort. The reason we come to church week after week and year after year is to be a part of this community and help it thrive. The purpose is to support one another in our community and love each other. Calling these reasons purposes can change our outlook on life itself. Purpose is a powerful thing. One person's purpose is a drop of water, strong but small. A community of people coming together for one common purpose is a wave. It moves the oceans around us. I believe our church is a tsunami, boiling over the top of walls that divide us with love and joy and purpose.
My love for the ocean began when I was just a little kid, as I became fascinated with its vibrant coral reefs and playful marine creatures in my Nat Geo Kids magazines. This passion for the earth has followed me throughout my life, eventually transforming into the subject of all of my papers at school, extracurricular activities, and quite a lot of my casual conversations. I began conducting my own research on our planet, anything from local water pollution to oceanic jellyfish populations to climate change. However, it felt like the more that I learned, the worse our situation appeared. As I read about the catastrophic amounts of plastic pollution in our oceans and excessive quantities of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, I panicked. I wondered why no one was talking about this, why we aren't always discussing this crisis and how we can solve it. While I focused on minimizing my own carbon footprint and the waste I produced, it seemed that in the grand scheme of things, I wasn't making any change at all. As an environmentalist and as an advocate in general, it can feel that the systems we're fighting are centuries-old trees with thick roots that go back to times before my great-great-grandparents were even born. It often looks like my little campus cleanup initiatives or climate education programs are weeds next to these humongous statutes of power. Sometimes it feels like we being everyone who yearns for a more just and kind world, are fighting a losing battle. I'm sure this feeling is well understood by this congregation. Whether you're an advocate for reproductive rights, racial justice, LGBTQ+ rights, it can feel like any effort we push for is met with the power and ferocity of systems a million times larger than ourselves. But instead of choosing to succumb to the panic I experienced while learning about the horrors of climate change and pollution, I'm choosing to take action, no matter how small. I choose to continue lugging around clunky reusable water bottles and awkwardly holding all of my things when I forget to bring bags to the store. While it may feel like our actions are insignificant in the grand scheme of things, our UU values require us to pursue justice in all capacities, pushing for good change in our world. And when we all come together, that's when we can see these changes build up. When I heard the theme for this year's sermons, I was a little confused as to what waves of purpose and tides of change were. To my slight dismay, the Sunday services did not involve marine biology-themed sermons or starfish in the magic box, but rather a metaphor of how we can make progress in our world. The tides symbolize this rhythm of justice, the sound of constant change. While we may only see the surface of the water, the waves of hate and injustice and fear, I know that despite all, the tides are working. Regardless of what occurs at sea level, the tides will eventually continue to flow in and out, exactly as they have for millions of years. To me, this represents our cycle of change. While quoting UU minister, Reverend Theodore Parker, Dr. Martin Luther King said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." And I believe that our tides of change are emblematic of his sentiments. The idea that while progress may take months, years, or even decades, eventually our universe will bend towards righteousness, kindness, and truth. Our tides will continue to flow in and out, but change will never cease. Regardless of our exhaustion and defeat, it's imperative that we continue fighting. Today is my 18th birthday. Thank you. Officially marking my status as a legal adult rather than a child, even though my dad still packs my lunch for me every day. Now, I feel that I have to accept responsibility for the generations after me, for the children sitting in Sunday school and their younger siblings in the nursery, and those that will come even after them. While I once was a little UU kid, sitting in circle time and fighting over who gets to light the battery-operated chalice, I now look to this next generation for motivation. They inspire me to continue to push for progress, regardless of how small that action may be, so that those tiny people can grow up in a world where they feel safe and respected and loved. Looking out into the congregation, I see the same sentiment echoed 100 times over, as some of the people in this room are responsible for guaranteeing the freedoms that my generation has today. I know that our congregation fought for civil rights in the 50s and 60s, and for reproductive rights in the 70s, and for same-sex marriage less than 10 years ago, and this work still goes on today. While we as a society and as a faith community have achieved incredible progress, we can't be done just yet. People like us, people who believe in a just universe and a loving God, have to continue to advocate for change, to cling to our UU values of fostering peace and equality. Despite the moments where it feels like we'll never make a dent, we persist. And if there's one thing I've learned in this past year, it's that we are not acting alone. Through my fellowship with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, I've met beautifully enthusiastic municipal and federal employees who work day in and day out to educate Americans on climate change. On our YRUU service trip last summer, I spoke with nonprofit leaders at the US-Mexico border who have committed their lives to aiding migrants in need, working towards dignity and justice for all. I've befriended youth across the nation with passions for ending eco-racism and achieving equity in voting rights and conserving leopard frogs. We, as Unitarian Universalists, are a part of a global network of dreamers who believe that good is worth fighting for, who dedicate their careers to advocating for others, and who know our true strength is in collaboration, as change may not come overnight, but it most certainly will not come from individual action. While it may feel like in our world right now, our news channels are full of hate, unkindness, and violence, there is always a new day. In ebbs and flows, and tides of change rushing in and sailing out, through generations, through seasons, we continue to work. And someday, the tides are bound to turn in our favor. Thank you.